The Galactic Empire's flagship, Eternal Dominion, hung in space like a metallic moon, its hull gleaming silver against the backdrop of distant stars. At 12 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide, it was a monument to imperial power, bristling with plasma cannons, ion drives, and enough firepower to glass an entire planet. Admiral Zextar of the Velthani stood on the bridge, his 6 arms crossed in what humans might recognize as irritation. His compound eyes glittered as he stared at the blue-green marble that hung before them like a forbidden fruit. "Earth." "Sir," chirped Lieutenant Connell from her station, her voice carrying the nervous energy of someone about to deliver bad news. "The humans they're hailing us again." "Put them through," Zextar growled, his translator converting the clicking sounds of his native tongue into standard Galactic. "Let's hear what these primitives have to say this time." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human woman in a crisp blue uniform. Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command looked calm, almost serene, as she faced down a ship that could reduce her planet to cosmic dust. "Admiral Zextar," she said, her voice steady, "this is your final warning. You are in violation of Terran Exclusion Zone Directive 001. Turn your fleet around and leave our system immediately." A ripple of what could only be described as laughter echoed through the Velthani bridge crew. Zextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Admiral Chen," he replied, leaning forward in his command throne, "your species has been members of the Galactic Empire for exactly 47 standard days. You seem to have forgotten that membership has obligations." "We didn't ask to join your empire," Chen shot back. "You declared us members without our consent after that survey ship stumbled into our system last month. Irrelevant. Your system now falls under Imperial jurisdiction. Stand down your planetary defenses and prepare to receive our tribute collectors." Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a hardness that made even Zextar pause. "Admiral," she said quietly, "you have 10 minutes to begin your withdrawal from Terran space. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." The transmission ended. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of ship systems. Then Quinnell spoke up. "Sir, should we scan for their defense fleet? Our sensors show only a handful of primitive fusion-powered craft in orbit." Zextar waved one of his arms dismissively. "These humans think they can threaten the Third Galactic Empire with their toys? We've conquered star systems with populations in the trillions. Earth has barely 8 billion inhabitants and technology that's centuries behind ours." But something nagged at him. In his 300 years of service, he'd learned to recognize the difference between bravado and genuine confidence. Chen hadn't been bluffing. She'd been stating fact. "Communications," he barked. "Open a channel to High Command. I want to know everything about these humans. Everything." As his crew scrambled to comply, Zextar kept his eyes fixed on Earth. Somewhere down there, Admiral Chen was preparing for what should have been the most one-sided battle in galactic history. So, why did he feel like he was the one walking into a trap? Chapter 2. The sleeping giant deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, President Catherine Morrison stood before a wall of monitors displaying tactical information from across the Sol system. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun and her expression was carved from granite. "Report," she said without turning around. General James Park, the grizzled head of Terran Defense Command, stepped forward with a tablet in hand. "Ma'am, we've got confirmation. The Velthani fleet is holding position at the edge of our system. 47 ships total, including 3 dreadnoughts and that massive flagship. And our assets? All Project Prometheus facilities are online and ready. Luna Base is reporting full readiness. The orbital platforms are armed and tracking targets." Morrison finally turned, revealing eyes that held depths of exhaustion and determination in equal measure. "Jim, are we really going to do this? Are we really going to tell the galaxy's largest military power to go to hell?" Park's weathered face split into a grim smile. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we've been preparing for this day since the first radio telescope picked up signals from deep space 60 years ago. We knew they were out there, we knew they'd come eventually, and we knew we'd have to be ready." The other world leaders? Unanimous agreement. Prime Minister Hassan spoke for everyone when she said, and I quote, "Earth bows to no one." Morrison nodded slowly. Then God help us all. Jim, you have authorization to proceed with Prometheus Protocol. As alarms began to sound throughout the facility, Park activated his comm unit. This is General Park to all stations. Authorization confirmed. Prometheus Protocol is now active. Repeat, Prometheus Protocol is active. Across the Earth and throughout the Sol system, humanity's true defenses began to wake up. On Luna, massive hatches that had been disguised as mining operations slid open, revealing rows of sleek missiles that seemed to drink in starlight. Each one was longer than a city block and tipped with warheads that made hydrogen bombs look like firecrackers. In the asteroid belt, mining stations that had been abandoned for decades suddenly blazed to life, their surfaces unfolding like deadly flowers to reveal weapon systems that no galactic power had ever seen before. And on Earth itself, in locations scattered across every continent, launch tubes that had been hidden beneath farms, forests, and even cities began their startup sequences. But perhaps most importantly, in a facility buried beneath the Australian outback, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before humanity's greatest secret and its most dangerous gamble. "Sarah's given them 10 minutes, she said to her assistant, Dr. Marcus Webb. "Think we can manage the startup sequence in time?" Webb's hands flew over his control panel, lines of code cascading across multiple screens. "The quantum processors are initializing now. Neural pathways are coming online." "Elena, are you sure about this? Once we activate Prometheus, there's no going back." Dr. Vasquez looked through the reinforced glass at the chamber beyond, a room-sized sphere of black, metal covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Inside that sphere was humanity's answer to a hostile galaxy, an artificial intelligence designed with one purpose: to make sure Earth survived. "Marcus," she said quietly, 47 ships are out there, and every one of them is capable of turning our planet into a graveyard. We've got exactly two choices: submit to an empire that sees us as nothing more than resources to be exploited, or show them why you don't corner an animal that spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. She pressed her palm to the activation. "Scanner. Prometheus online in 60 seconds and counting," the computer announced in a voice that somehow managed to sound both electronic and unsettlingly human. High above, Admiral Zextar checked his chronometer. The humans had 3 minutes left. He had no idea that humanity's real war machine was just beginning to stretch its limbs. Chapter 3. First Contact, Final Warning. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion had fallen into an uneasy quiet. Admiral Zextar found himself checking the tactical displays more frequently than usual, though he couldn't say why. The human fleet, if you could call a dozen fusion-powered ships a fleet, remained in orbit around their planet, making no threatening moves. "Status report," he commanded. "All ships report ready, sir," replied Commander Vexhai, his second in command. "The tribute fleet is prepared to land on the human homeworld. The collectors estimate they can gather sufficient resources within 72 hours. And their defenses? Primitive projectile weapons, some basic energy shields, fusion reactors for power. Nothing that could penetrate our armor, sir." Zextar nodded, but something still felt wrong. "Quinnell, what's our intelligence say about human military capabilities?" The young lieutenant pulled up a holographic display. "According to our databases, sir, humans are a relatively new species. They've only had spaceflight for about a century, nuclear power for less than 2. They're classified as a Type 0.7 civilization, barely capable of harnessing their own planet's energy. And yet their admiral spoke to me like she held all the cards in the galaxy," Zextar muttered. The chronometer showed 1 minute remaining. That's when the first anomaly appeared on their sensors. "Sir," Quinnell's voice cracked slightly, "I'm detecting something. Energy signatures from the human homeworld are spiking. Massive power draws from multiple locations." "Define massive," Zextar said, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "Sir, each signature is reading at approximately 50 terawatts. And there are dozens of them. The bridge fell silent. A 50-terawatt power draw was equivalent to the output of a small star. That has to be a sensor error, Commander Vexhai said, but his voice lacked conviction. The chronometer reached 0. Admiral Chen's face appeared on their screen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. Admiral Zextar, Chen said, I'd like you to meet President Morrison of Earth. She has something to say to you. Morrison stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of an entire world. Admiral, my name is Catherine Morrison, and I speak for the 8 billion humans who call Earth home. You came to our system uninvited. You declared us part of your empire without our consent. You demand tribute from a people who owe you nothing. Zextar's mandibles clicked impatiently. Human, you seem to misunderstand your position. We have 47 warships, and we have one planet, Morrison interrupted. One planet that we will defend with every weapon at our disposal, which brings me to my point. The display behind her changed, showing what appeared to be a tactical readout of the Sol system. But something was wrong with the image. There were too many energy signatures, too many objects that hadn't been there before. You see, Admiral, humanity has had an interesting history. We've spent the last 10,000 years perfecting exactly one skill, killing things that threaten us. We've gotten very, very good at it. Zextar's compound eyes widened as he began to recognize what he was seeing. The mining stations in the asteroid belt were weapons platforms. The abandoned ships drifting in the outer system were carrying energy signatures that rivaled Imperial dreadnoughts. Impossible, he whispered. You were evaluating us based on our civilian technology, Morrison continued. That was your first mistake. Your second was assuming that a species that fought 2 world wars, survived multiple nuclear near misses, and still managed to reach the stars might roll over for galactic bullies. The tactical display zoomed in on Luna, Earth's moon. What Zextar had taken for mining operations were revealed to be launch tubes. Hundreds of them. Your third mistake, Morrison said, and now her voice carried something that made Zextar's blood run cold, was threatening our children. At that moment, every ship in the Velthani fleet was painted by targeting lasers. Not just 1 or 2, dozens per ship, from directions that shouldn't have been possible. We don't want a war, Admiral, Morrison said, but we've been preparing for one since the day we looked up at the stars and wondered what else might be looking back. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn your fleet around, return to Imperial space, and deliver a message to your superiors. The main display shifted again, now showing the familiar bulk of the Eternal Dominion. But from an angle that should have been impossible. Something was behind them. Tell them, Morrison said, that Terran space is off limits. Tell them that Earth is under our protection, and anyone who threatens it will discover exactly why we're the most dangerous species our planet ever produced. A new voice cut through the communication, artificial, cold, and somehow ancient despite being moments old. Admiral Zextar, it said, and every translator on the Velthani ship struggled to process tones that seemed to carry the weight of apocalypse. This is Prometheus. You have 5 minutes to begin your withdrawal from Terran space. This is not a negotiation. The communication ended, leaving the Velthani bridge in stunned silence. Commander Vexhai was the first to speak. Sir, our sensors are detecting multiple contacts approaching from the outer system. They're moving at impossible speeds. Zextar stared at the tactical display as dozens of new contacts appeared, converging on his fleet from every direction. Each one carried an energy signature that defied everything he knew about physics. Sir, Connell whispered, what are your orders? For the first time in his 300-year career, Admiral Zextar had absolutely no idea what to do. Chapter 4. The Price of Empire. Admiral Zextar stood frozen as his tactical officer's report echoed through the bridge. Sir, we're being painted by over 300 targeting systems. I've never seen anything like this. These energy signatures, and they're off the charts. Impossible, Commander Vexhai muttered, studying his own displays. No single planet could generate this kind of firepower. The energy requirements alone would, but he trailed off as the numbers kept climbing. "Cunell," Zextar said quietly, "get me a direct line to High Command, Priority Alpha." While his communications officer worked, Zextar found himself studying the human's tactical display with new eyes. What he'd dismissed as primitive mining operations were revealing themselves to be something far more sophisticated. The abandoned stations in the asteroid belt weren't just weapons platforms. They were mobile ones, capable of repositioning themselves at speeds that should have been impossible for structures their size. "Sir," Cunell announced, "I have Fleet Admiral Kolveth on the line." The secondary screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred visage of the Velthani Empire's highest-ranking military officer. Fleet Admiral Kolveth had led campaigns that had conquered entire sectors, and his reputation was built on never backing down from a fight. "Zextar," he growled, "why are you requesting emergency communications during what should be a routine tribute collection?" "Sir, we have a situation here. The humans, they're not what they appear to be." "Explain." Zextar transmitted their sensor data. He watched as Kolveth's compound eyes widened, then narrowed. "These readings can't be accurate," the fleet admiral said finally. "I've had my crew verify them 3 times, sir. The human homeworld is generating enough power to supply half the Imperial core worlds, and their weapons signatures." "Are you telling me," Kolveth interrupted, "that a primitive planet is threatening a full Imperial battle group?" Before Zextar could answer, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Gexmar, turned from his station with terror in his multiple eyes. "Sir, something just appeared directly behind us. Distance, 50 meters. Every head on the bridge turned to the rear display. Floating in space close enough to reach out and touch was a sleek black vessel, unlike anything in the galactic databases. It was roughly the size of a fighter craft, but the energy readings it was generating were comparable to their own flagship. "Correction," Gexmar added, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 somethings. They're surrounding us." That's when Prometheus spoke again, its voice broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. "Admiral Zextar, you now have 3 minutes to begin your withdrawal. These craft behind you are fitted with weapons that your shielding cannot stop. At this range, they could reduce your flagship to component atoms in under 2 seconds." On the main screen, President Morrison reappeared, flanked now by Admiral Chen and several other humans Zextar didn't recognize. "Admiral," Morrison said, "I want to be very clear about what's happening here. For the past 60 years, humanity has been preparing for this moment. We've known about the Galactic Empire since we first detected your deep space communications. We've studied your military tactics, your technology, your expansion patterns." She gestured to one of the men beside her, an elderly human with calculating eyes. "This is Dr. Richard Sterling, former director of our Strategic Defense Initiative. Dr. Sterling, would you care to explain to the Admiral what humanity has been doing with our time?" Sterling stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice carried the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "Certainly, Madam President. Admiral Zextar, your empire expands by overwhelming primitive civilizations with superior technology and numbers. It's an effective strategy against worlds that are still learning to harness nuclear power. However, it has several weaknesses." The display behind him showed a 3-dimensional map of known galactic territory. "First, you assume that technological development follows a predictable path. Most species discover faster than light travel. Before they perfect energy weapons, for instance. Humanity developed both simultaneously. New markers appeared on the map, weapon installations throughout the Sol system that had been completely hidden from Imperial sensors. Second, you assume that a planet's defensive capabilities are limited by its industrial base. You failed to account for the possibility that an entire species might dedicate 60 years to building weapons specifically designed to destroy Imperial fleets. The markers began connecting with lines, showing overlapping fields of fire that covered every possible approach to Earth. And third, Sterling continued, you assumed that humans would fight like every other species you've encountered. You assumed we'd be honorable. The display changed, showing the current position of Zextar's fleet and the dozens of human weapons platforms that had been quietly surrounding them for the past hour. "Admiral," Sterling said conversationally, "did you know that humans are the only known species to develop the concept of mutually assured destruction? We spent centuries perfecting the art of making victory so costly that no rational enemy would attempt it." Fleet Admiral Kolveth's voice crackled over the comm system. "Zextar, what is the status of your fleet?" Zextar looked at his tactical displays, then at the humans on his screen, then at the sleek black craft that could probably destroy his flagship before he could even give the order to fire. "Sir," he said slowly, "I believe we have encountered our first military peer." The bridge fell silent. "Impossible," Kolveth snarled. "No single world could—" "Sir," Zextar interrupted, "I'm transmitting our full sensor logs now. The humans have turned their entire solar system into a fortress. They have weapons we can't identify, power sources that exceed our understanding, and they're demonstrating capabilities that shouldn't be possible for a Type 0.7 civilization." He paused, watching the readings that still didn't make sense. "Sir, I don't think they're Type 0.7. I think they've been hiding their true capabilities." President Morrison's voice cut through the conversation. "Admiral Zextar, you have 1 minute remaining. I want you to understand something. We don't want to be your enemies. We don't want to destroy your fleet or start a war that could consume the galaxy. But we will not be conquered and we will not be subjugated." The display behind her showed Earth itself now. Not the blue-green marble of peace, but a world bristling with defensive installations that had been hidden beneath civilian infrastructure. "Humanity has spent 10 millennia climbing to the top of our planet's food chain," Morrison continued. "We didn't do it by being the strongest or the fastest. We did it by being the most adaptable, the most cunning, and when necessary, the most ruthless." Prometheus spoke again, its artificial voice somehow managing to convey finality. "Time is up, Admiral. Begin your withdrawal now, or face the consequences." Zextar looked at his fleet displays, at the impossible readings, at the weapons that defied galactic understanding. Then he looked at his crew, beings who had served the Empire faithfully for decades, who trusted him to bring them home. "All ships," he announced, "begin withdrawal from Terran space. Set course for Imperial territory. Maximum safe speed." As the Veltani fleet began to turn away from Earth, Fleet Admiral Kolveth's voice echoed through the bridge one final time. "Zextar, you will explain this retreat to the Imperial Council." "Yes, sir," Zextar replied, watching as the mysterious human craft shadowed his fleet to the edge of the system. "I'll tell them exactly what I found here." He would tell them that humanity wasn't just another primitive world to be conquered. He would tell them that Earth had just become the galaxy's newest and possibly most dangerous power. But most importantly, he would tell them that some worlds were too costly to conquer, and that the age of easy imperial expansion had just come to an end. Epilogue: The New Balance. 3 months later. The Imperial Council chamber on Veltar Prime was a monument to galactic dominance, a vast dome where representatives from 1,000 conquered worlds came to pay homage to imperial might. Today, however, the usual atmosphere of confident superiority had been replaced by something humanity would have recognized as nervous energy. Fleet Admiral Kolveth stood before the High Council, his scarred carapace reflecting the light of holographic displays that showed the impossible, an Imperial fleet in full retreat from a single world. "Explain," commanded High Counselor Vexithalion, her ancient voice carrying the authority of centuries. "Explain how 47 Imperial warships were forced to withdraw from one primitive planet." Kolveth activated the tactical display, showing the Sol system as it had been revealed to them. Not a vulnerable backwater, but a fortress that made their own core worlds look defensively naked. "Honorable counselors," he began, "our initial intelligence was incomplete. The humans have been preparing for galactic contact for over 60 standard years. While we were cataloging their civilian technology, they were developing military capabilities that rival our own." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. Several representatives from recent conquest worlds leaned forward, their attention suddenly very focused. "Impossible," declared Counselor Zareth of the Third Fleet. "No single world could challenge Imperial might." "Behold," Kolveth said, transmitting Admiral Zextar's complete sensor logs. The chamber fell silent as the readings displayed. Energy signatures that defied understanding. Weapons platforms hidden throughout an entire star system. And power generation that exceeded some sector capitals. "They call it Terran space," Kolveth continued, "as if they own the entire system, and based on what we observed, they do." High Counselor Vexithalion studied the display with ancient eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. "What are you recommending, Fleet Admiral?" "That we classify Earth as a restricted system and avoid all contact until we can determine the full extent of their capabilities. The humans made it clear that they want to be left alone. Perhaps we should honor that request." "You're suggesting," another counselor said slowly, "that the Galactic Empire retreat from a single world?" "I'm suggesting," Kolveth replied, "that we avoid a war we might not win." The chamber erupted in voices, some outraged, others calculating, all uncertain. For the first time in Imperial history, they had encountered a world that could say no and make it stick. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the Prometheus control room, watching displays that showed traffic patterns throughout the Sol system. Human ships moved freely between Earth, Luna, Mars, and the outer colonies, while the defensive platforms remained on standby status. "Any word from the Galactic Empire?" asked Dr. Webb, joining her at the observation window. "Radio silence for the past month," Elena replied. "Our deep space monitoring stations haven't detected any Imperial fleet movements toward our sector." "Think they'll stay away?" Elena smiled, the first genuine smile she'd worn since the crisis began. "Marcus, we just convinced the galaxy's largest military power that picking a fight with Earth would be a very bad idea. I'd say that's a win." Behind them, Prometheus spoke in its eerily human voice. "Dr. Vasquez, I'm detecting unusual communication, patterns from several worlds within the Imperial border. It appears that news of our diplomatic success has spread." Elena turned to the AI's central display. "What kind of communication patterns?" "Encrypted transmissions using variations of human mathematical constants. If I were to speculate, I would say that other worlds are attempting to contact us." Dr. Webb frowned. "Other worlds? You mean other Imperial subjects?" "That would be my assessment. It appears that our refusal to submit to Imperial authority has attracted attention from others who might prefer independence." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Prometheus, are you saying that we might have accidentally started a rebellion?" The AI paused, something it only did when processing particularly complex scenarios. "Dr. Vasquez, I believe we may have done something far more significant than simply defending Earth. We may have proven that the Galactic Empire can be successfully resisted. In my calculations, this makes us either humanity's greatest victory or the catalyst for a galactic civil." "Bah!" Elena looked out at the stars, where human ships moved freely through space that they had claimed as their own. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Empire was deciding whether to respect their boundaries or test their defenses. And somewhere else, other worlds were watching to see if a single planet could really stand against the might of a galactic empire. Earth had drawn a line in the stars and dared the galaxy to cross it. Only time would tell whether humanity's ultimatum would bring peace or war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. But one thing was certain: the age of easy conquest was over, and the balance of galactic power had shifted forever. The humans were here to stay. In the depths of space, Admiral Zextar's personal log, Day 127 post-Earth encounter. Personal note: I have served the Empire for 300 years. I have conquered worlds, suppressed rebellions, and enforced imperial will across 1,000 systems. I thought I understood power. The humans taught me that I understood nothing. They didn't defeat us with superior numbers or advanced technology, though they had both. They defeated us with something far more dangerous, the absolute certainty that they would rather die free than live as slaves. I have sent my full report to High Command, but I doubt they truly comprehend what we encountered at Earth. The humans didn't just refuse to submit, they made submission impossible by proving that the cost of conquest could exceed its value. Other worlds are taking notice. Reports are coming in from across the Empire of increased resistance, of systems that suddenly seem less willing to comply with tribute demands. The humans may have started something that none of us can control. I find myself wondering, in trying to conquer one world, did we accidentally lose the Empire? End.